Of all the horror movies released through 1999, Sleepy Hollow was one of the most eagerly anticipated. Both Kevin Yagher and Gary Tunnicliffe did most of the movie's practical effects, and since we were interviewing them for a premiere issue anyway, we thought we'd ask them about their latest work on Tim Burton's version of the horror classic.
Of course, Washington Irving came up with this tale that we've all grown up on about the Headless Horseman chasing Ichabod Crane, the geeky schoolmaster, and chasing him out of town. If that's the childhood version of the story, what was the adult version? What happens if there really was a Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow, and what would that story be?
What most people may not realize is that it was Kevin Yagher who originally pushed to make a movie version of Sleepy Hollow.
I kept asking myself, what is it that I like about this? Why do I keep wanting to do it? Is it, what is it about? Is it the Ichabod? There's nothing there. And it really came down to the Headless Horseman, the rides, and that nightly ride. So I thought, well, how do we take a story like that then and make it all about the chase? How can we get the horseman to keep coming out of the woods or wherever he's coming from to chase? What would he be doing it for? And the idea coming up that he's doing it as he's killing people for a reason. He's a serial killer. And I thought this would be a great film to be my first directing thing, to come out of the gate with something that's spooky and, with like the old Hammer films. I love those films. How it developed was I took the rough idea that I had and pitched it to my agents. They hooked me up with a young writer who just came into town named Andrew Kevin Walker. So he and I got together, and for 3 months we sort of bashed out the story and down to every little detail of the scene. He's not this geeky schoolmaster now. He's like the first American detective. He's like the first guy who would ever come up with fingerprinting, and he gets a chance in Sleepy Hollow to finally apply his techniques. And we went around and we pitched it to Scott Rudin. And he bought it, and I had a deal. Andy was to write the script, and I was to direct the feature. At that point, they sort of put it on hold, thinking maybe period pieces don't work right now. 5 years it kind of sat around, and finally Tim Burton needed something. His wheels were spinning, and heard about this and asked to see the script, and then he showed interest, and I said, hey, let him direct it, and I'll take a co-producer role. And it just turned out to be this big, huge thing.
And action.
I used to make jokes that if anyone was to direct it, or I'd step down, it'd be Tim Burton, because it's such a Tim Burton film, and it worked out great.
We have murders in New York without benefit of ghouls and goblins.
The look of the film stayed the same. One thing that Tim did that I thought was interesting, at first I was sort of taken back a little bit, because I saw Johnny Depp on the set doing some comedy things, and I thought, wow, we wrote a drama. I thought it was strange the way suddenly he kind of came onto the stage when he first comes into the Van Tassel estate, and Johnny's kind of doing this sort of head-jerking thing, a little Edward Scissorhandsy, and I thought, okay, that's funny. And we did have funny bits in it, because you always have to mix that comedy relief, in serious films. So I was thinking, boy, I don't know what are they doing with it. And then I started watching dailies, and I started putting the pieces together and seeing how it was. And it was very, very subtle what he was doing. But it actually worked out. I think Johnny's performance is just amazing, and he's hilarious in it. And it was a great balance. And I don't know what I was thinking, because with Tim, every one of his films have a quirky sense to them. I thought the script would dictate how the tone of the film, and Tim still took it and somehow made it quirky, and it works great. And action.
While his regular staff was back in the States doing tests that would later be used to bring the Horseman to life, Kevin needed some additional help for all the work that was ahead of him in England.
I had to move my whole shop to England, and I had to, for the effects, and I had to find an all-English crew, and I had a guy named Gary Tunnicliffe who has a shop here. And I asked him if he could come and help me set up an English crew, because he knows so many people, and was able to go through and say, don't take him or her, or these guys are good, So that was kind of an experience to go through, having to crew up in a strange land. Didn't know where anything was. Where do I find silicone? I had to rely on new people, and that was tough.
Only that the three were slain in open ground. Their heads found severed from their bodies.
Their heads were not found severed. Their heads were not found at all.
The majority of the effects we were doing on Sleepy Hollow were, anyone who knows the story, decapitations. So we did several live casts of most of the actors in the films who get their heads taken off. We did 2 heads basically for each person. We did a shocked expression and we did a dead expression.
I'd say most of them were done actually digitally, where we took the heads and either rolled them in front of a blue screen, or we took them and rolled them right on the set. So we would shoot the actor, and then put the head where the actor was and roll it. 3 of them were done practically. And the whole thing was meant to be practical because of money. And then we were able to work with ILM, and they did a couple of quick kind of tests that actually worked. Tim liked them, so they ended up decapitating everybody after that because he knew he could afford it.
So not only were they just a dead head like you see a fake head brought in, but we manipulated the jaw so that they had mechanisms in them and weighted parts of the skin so that they would actually flop and move and move around when they were actually being carried or manipulated. And that was good.
We did a mechanical horse from like the knees on up that Christopher Walken sat on. The mechanism itself was built for National Velvet, and we reskinned it, refurred it, mechanized the head so that it would move and the ears would wiggle and the eyes would blink and stuff like that. And we blew steam out the nose and things like that.
I did a stab wound on Johnny. He gets stabbed in the shoulder by the horseman. A quirk of the horseman is that his sword, it cauterizes wounds, so we did this strange cauterized wound on Johnny.
What is that thing? My talisman, it protects me from the horseman.
When we were trying to come up with ways to cut people's heads off that were a little different than what we've seen before. So Tim had the idea of when the blade goes through Richard Griffith's head, that it spins around 3 times. And again, you know, this is that subtle Tim Burton humor, and I thought, I looked at him and he goes, I know, it sounds cartoony. And I said, yeah. He said, well, have it go around once up to 6 times. Just give me those options. So we ended up going with the 3 spinner. And you see it in the film, and it's not, you don't laugh at it, it works. You know, there's a humor element to it, again, very subtle, but you see it spin around and then it falls off, and we did we spun it with a Makita drill motor that was actually inside the torso that spins the body. And then the head hits it, we hit a brake, and as soon as it does, it snaps the head over to like a 45-degree angle, and you can see the part and you can see the cut in it. And then we cut to a wide shot, and we use a full-size Richard Griffith's body that's held together with electromagnets. And we've had it all computer programmed so we could flip a switch, and the arms would go down first, and the knees would buckle, and the head would continue to fall off, and it would roll down the hill. And then we could put it all back together and literally hit a switch, and the power would go back on, and the magnet, power would work again. So that was like our biggest decap effect.
Oh my God!
With all the work that he's done on Sleepy Hollow, we wonder which effect Gary will remember most.
And I literally, at the time I was doing this, I thought, anyone ever asks me what's the strangest job I've ever had, then I have the answer for them now. And I spent about 45 minutes rolling a fake head into Johnny Depp's crotch. I mean, I was literally, Johnny was like, where the camera is, and I was rolling a fake head, into his crotch and trying to get the face to stare up at his groin. And of course, it never looked the right way. It would look up, it would look down, it would look away. And if you want to get intimate with somebody, then you roll a head into their crotch. The other surprising thing about that was the amount of women who came up to me and said, if you need a stand-in for the head, we'll do it. Not much you can say about that, really.